What's up, film fanatics, and welcome to First Take. I'm Seán Weathers.
And I'm Angus Kohm. And today we're stepping into the blood-soaked stalks of Clown in a Cornfield, the new horror comedy that's been buzzing. Now, this one comes with some pedigree, and the initial reviews had people talking.
But does it live up to the hype? Or is it just another kernel of disappointment?
Clown in a Cornfield is a 2025 slasher film directed by Eli Craig, known for Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. It's based on Adam Cesare's 2020 novel of the same name. The story follows Quinn Maybrook, a teenager who moves to the small town of Kettle Springs, only to find herself targeted by a killer clown named Frendo.
Every year, there's this parade where everyone gathers around a Frendo float.
Frendo.
Filming took place in Winnipeg, Canada, from September to October 2023. The town of Kettle Springs was brought to life with a mix of practical sets and CGI enhancements. Director Eli Craig aimed to blend traditional slasher tropes with modern sensibilities. He mentioned in interviews that he wanted to create a film that was both an homage and a subversion of classic horror elements.
There's a psycho dressed up like Frendo, trying to kill us!
The character of Frendo was designed to be a symbol of the town's dark past, with the clown costume evolving throughout the film to reflect the escalating horror.
Critics have had mixed reactions. Some praise the film's self-aware humor and inventive kills, while others feel it doesn't bring enough new ideas to the table.
On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a 93% approval rating from 28 critics, with an average score of 7.4 out of 10. However, it's worth noting that the high percentage may not reflect the nuanced opinions expressed in the reviews.
Clown in a Cornfield delves into themes of generational conflict, small-town secrets, and the dangers of conformity. The film uses the horror genre to explore how communities can turn on outsiders and the consequences of suppressing individuality. The killer clown Frendo serves as a manifestation of the town's repressed guilt and desire for control. The film suggests that the real horror lies not in the supernatural, but in the human capacity for violence and scapegoating.
Alright, my turn. I found Clown in a Cornfield lacking in several areas. The acting and writing, honestly, it felt reminiscent of those old after-school specials, or maybe something you'd catch on the Disney Channel. We're talking about melodramatic performances, formulaic story beats, a distinct lack of nuance, and a patronizing tone to its messaging. I can appreciate that the movie wanted to be more than just a standard slasher, but for me, the execution just didn't land. Even when it leaned back into the horror, there were no memorable one-liners from the clown, no particular creative kills, which is a real missed opportunity with a killer like Frendo. The cast also didn't work for me. There's no real diversity. Everyone looks like they stepped out of a Gap ad. Even the character who's supposed to be the creepy outcast. None of them possesses any distinct personality traits that can create interesting contrasts or allow them to play off of each other effectively. Consequently, the decisions they made feel less organic and more like they're just trying to push the story forward. Because of all this, the movie felt void of any real tension or drama for a large portion of its runtime. We're basically just left waiting to see which boring side character gets killed off next before our main lead inevitably defeats the killer clown. It's a modern slasher, so of course, no cell signal when it's needed the most. That trope is alive and well. And the supposed horror comedy aspect? I barely cracked a smile up until deep into the film. There's a scene where characters are tossing around what turns out to be their friend's decapitated head without realizing it's real. That's not dark humor. That's bafflingly dumb and pulls you right out. With that said, and this is a significant however, once the third act finally kicked in, things did get genuinely exciting. The pace picked up considerably. The jokes actually started landing. Some interesting revelations were revealed, and the plot twists, when they came, made a decent amount of sense within the film's established world. For a while there, I was actually on board. Unfortunately, just as it was hitting its stride, the main villain's monologue started and everything slowed right back down, returning to that formulaic, predictable structure. So, overall, Clown in a Cornfield is an extremely uneven movie. I can't recommend anyone pay theater prices for this, but if you're a dedicated horror fan and you have a good amount of patience to slog through that first 50 minutes or so, it might be worth a watch once it hits Shudder or another streaming service. But that's a cautious might.
Clown in a Cornfield, like a lot of modern horror films, is basically a pastiche of older, better movies. I was shocked to find out that it was in fact based on a novel. That's like finding out Friday the 13th Part 8 was based on a novel. How can that be? It's one thing to sit through a 90-minute movie and say, yeah, I've seen it all before. But to invest the time it takes to read a complete novel, there would need to be more story, deeper characters, and the mystery. Well, let's just say, if you know who the killer is by the end of the first chapter, it would be pretty hard to finish the last 300 plus pages. I'm going to assume that the book was better than this. To say The Clown in the Cornfield is nothing groundbreaking is a huge understatement. Most of its ideas can be traced to earlier films, but at least they are done reasonably well here, and often expanded just enough to make them feel a little bit fresh. It also helps that Clown in the Cornfield is definitely played for laughs. If it took itself too seriously, it might suffer more from being too derivative, but if it's an homage or a parody, we can be a little more forgiving of its familiarity. The biggest problem is how predictable it is. Movies like Scream manage to keep audiences guessing, but anyone who's seen a number of Golden Age slashers, 90s postmodern slashers, or even Italian giallos will be able to see everything that's coming here before it happens. Clown in a Cornfield does play around with more modern themes like the generation gap, but most of that stuff feels pretty superficial and forced, like when younger characters don't know how to use a rotary phone, for instance. It's not only hard to swallow, but as a joke it falls flat. Still, Clown in a Cornfield is mostly entertaining, and slasher fans will likely find it to be a pleasant enough way to pass 90-some-odd minutes. I enjoyed it the most as an homage to classic slasher films, but when Clown in a Cornfield tries to get too clever, it only manages to prove how much better those classic slashers were.
So, that's our first take on Clown in a Cornfield. A real roller coaster of quality on this one.
Indeed. Let us know your thoughts. If you've seen it, did Frendo bring the frights or the fails for you? Drop your opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next review. Thanks for watching First Take.